Call of the Void contains strong language and possible trigger warnings and is intended for mature audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Hi, I'm Deacon.
Hi, I'm Jack.
And welcome to Call of the Void, a podcast about all things weird and macabre. So, you've got some stuff for me this week, apparently.
Oh, I got some stuff for you.
Oh, God.
So, I wanted to open up with this thing. I've been meaning to tell you about this since, April.
Oh, God.
And I keep forgetting to bring it up when we record and shit. So, there's a news story that my brother showed me, and very specifically had you in mind.
Oh, I'm scared.
From BBC News, this is. Yeti Footprints. Indian Army mocked over claim. The Indian Army has claimed to have found footprints of the Yeti, sparking jokes and disbelief on social media. The Army tweeted to its nearly 6 million followers on Monday that it had discovered mysterious footprints of mythical beast Yeti at the Makalu base camp in the Himalayas. The Yeti, a giant ape-like creature, often figures in South Asian folklore. There is no evidence proving Yeti exists, but the myth retains a strong appeal in the region. So yeah. That happened. So there is some evidence that Bigfoot might not be bullshit after all.
There's not. Because Bigfoot is bullshit. There isn't. It's not real. It's not true.
I will link the report, as I'm going to link all of my references for this episode in the description. But I unfortunately do not see an author for this particular article. So, let me just save that to my folder so I remember to do that. So, yeah. What do you think of that shit?
Nope. I'm gonna go ahead and debunk it for you right now. It's not real.
I feel like Bigfoot could show up at your door playing a ukulele and crying to you. And you'd be like, no, you're not real.
Your hallucination. Bye.
Oh, God. So, for something incredibly different, what I have for you today, and I know you probably have no idea about this because it's a sports-related thing.
Nope.
Yep. So, have you ever heard of the book or the movie The Natural?
Nope.
Okay, so The Natural, I know about this because when I was a kid, I saw it a bunch of times. I think I've mentioned this before. The reason why my brothers and I are sports fans is because my mom was a huge sports fan, and her favorite sport was baseball. So she loved, baseball movies and stuff like that, and one of them was The Natural. The Natural came out in 1984, and it starred Robert Redford as the character Roy Hobbs. It was based on a book that was published back in 1952. The author Bernard Malamud, that was his debut work. And the story of the book and the movie deviates a bit from certain things, but the story of the book centers around this kid, Roy Hobbs. He's a 19-year-old who's trying to try out for the Chicago Cubs, and he's traveling on a train with his manager. And there's a couple of different characters on the train. One of them is this guy, Walter Wambold, who is kind of supposed to be a Babe Ruth-like character. And at one point, the train makes a stop, and the passengers get out. And when Wambold hears that Hobbs is going to try out for the Cubs, he's like, oh, I bet you can't strike me out. And Hobbs strikes him out. So when they get back on the train, this woman, Harriet Bird, strikes up a conversation with him. And she winds up staying at the same hotel that Hobbs is staying at. So, she invites him to her room. And when he gets to the room, she takes out a gun, points it at him, and says, "Will you be the best there ever was?" And proceeds to shoot him. So the rest of the book after that, it starts up again like 15 years later, and it deals with, the aftermath a little bit of it. The movie goes into it more. Something happens at the end of the movie that is actually medically impossible, but that's beside the point. But yeah, like, and it focuses on a couple of relationships he has, and this bat that he makes himself called the Wonder Boy, and, So, I was very familiar with this movie. I haven't seen it in ages. And a few nights ago, my brother and I were watching an episode of Archer where they kind of spoof The Natural. And there's a scene where a woman asks him if he would be the best there ever was at lacrosse, and then shoots him when he was a young kid, and we just started talking about it. And the next thing I know, my brother's looking at his phone, and he goes, "Oh, I never knew that. Apparently, The Natural was based on a real-life story."
Excuse me?
Yep. So it was inspired by the real-life story of a player back in the 1940s named Eddie Waitkus. This was one of the first cases of stalker crimes that was ever recorded. So what happened was, there was this 19-year-old. Her name was Ruth Ann Steinhagen. And she became incredibly obsessed with Eddie Waitkus. She had this massive crush on him, went to games just to see him, she fantasized that they had this relationship together. And with her obsession, she did things such as she kept a shrine of him in her room.
Wait, so are we talking like Helda Pataki, like, shrine, or?
I'm not sure what that is.
From Hey Arnold.
I never watched Hey Arnold.
Oh my god. Okay.
So
yeah, Helga in Hey Arnold, she used to keep a shrine of Arnold.
Yeah, so it was basically, from what I've read, it was something like an altar dedicated to Waitkus. So, and by the way, this all took place in Chicago, which I'm pretty sure is part of the reason why in the book Hobbs was trying out for the Chicago Cubs. But anywho, so yeah, she had this shrine to him in her room. She slept with his picture under her pillow. And one of the most what things that I heard when my brother told me about this at first was one of the things that she would do was every night. And now times were different back then, so she was a 19-year-old living in Chicago, but she lived on her own. She had her own place. So every night she would set a place for him at her dinner table.
The fuck?
Now keep in mind, they had never even met.
Yeah.
Like, it never even had a slight fan exchange. He had no idea who this woman was. And in her mind, they were in a relationship. And she agonized over him. There is an author, John Theodore. He wrote a biography about Waitkus back in 2002. And he did an interview with the Chicago Tribune about the whole thing. And he went into a little bit more detail of stuff that she had in her shrine. So she had photos, she had newspaper clippings, scorecards, and 50 ticket stubs. 50 from just going to see him.
Yeah.
You know. So her family knew about this. I was very concerned. Like, super very concerned.
Yeah, I wonder why.
Yeah, so at some point, I forget the year, but at some point, Waitkus gets traded to the Phillies. So Steinhagen's family are like, oh, this is such a good thing. Thank God. You know, because maybe now that he's not even in the same city and she can't just easily go see him and everything, you know, maybe she'll get over this.
Yeah.
That is not what happened. So, yeah, her obsession with him lasted for 2 years.
Uh-huh.
I don't remember if that was 2 years before he got traded or what the deal was, but it was at least 2 years total.
Uh-huh.
And so he got traded to the Phillies, and to her, that broke her. She became even more obsessed with him after that. In part because she kind of felt this weird sense of betrayal that he left. But also because now she couldn't go see him. I forget which article it was that I read about the whole thing, but one of the theories was that part of what kept her in check was the fact that they were in the same city. She knew she can go to a game to see him, you know, and now that she didn't have that, her obsession grew and grew. So in 1949, the Phillies came to Chicago to play against the Cubs. And Ruth Ann Steinhagen took that as her chance to do something about this obsession of hers. So I don't know how she found out. I don't know if it was, you know, a common knowledge thing, like, oh, well, you know, when teams are in town, this is the hotel that they usually stay at.
Yeah.
But she found out which hotel he was staying in. And she checked herself in. She got herself a room. And she sent a note to his room with the phone number to her room. And according to the website law.jrank.org, the note said, "It is extremely important that I see you as soon as possible. We're not acquainted, but I have something of importance to speak to you about. I think it would be to your advantage to let me explain this to you, as I am leaving the hotel the day after tomorrow. I realize that this is out of the ordinary, but as I say, it is extremely important." So, Waitkus called the number because he thought, oh, this is a little strange, but, maybe this is a friend of a friend. Maybe this is somebody trying to tell me something actually important.
Yeah.
So maybe this is a thing I should do. So he called her up, and she set up a time to meet her. She said, I just need to get changed. Can you meet me down here at 11:30? So he goes to her room. She answers, and one of the things that he said about her demeanor was that she was very deadpan, I think the word was that he used. All business, not really showing much emotion. So he walked in, and he turns around, and he sees her holding a .22 rifle. And she points the gun at him, and she says, "You're not going to bother me anymore." And she shoots him in the chest. So, in the book and the movie, the character Bird, Harriet Bird, she commits suicide. I want to say she jumps out the window, if I remember correctly, but she kills herself immediately after shooting him. This was not the case for Steinhagen. Steinhagen, right after she did that, I believe later she said that was one of the thoughts of how it could end, but she decided not to. After she shot Wakis, she walked over to the phone and she called the front desk, and she said, "I just shot a man." So the ambulance comes, she obviously gets arrested, and they take Wakis to the hospital, where he survives. He actually lived. I believe it was 6, because the bullet went through. I think it caused some, if I remember correctly, it caused some damage to his lungs, but it wasn't like super severe.
Yeah.
But the bullet lodged in one of his back muscles. And
oh god.
Excuse me. Yeah, and unlike in Hollywood, where, in so many movies, when somebody gets shot, it's like, quick, take the bullet out. That's actually a terrible fucking idea. You can
don't ever.
More often than not, in gunshot victims, they keep the bullet in, because you can cause way more damage.
Exponentially more damage,
yeah. Yeah. If they take it out, it has to be under, extreme care and extremely knowledgeable situations.
Especially because a lot of times, like, bullets will explode on impact, and that causes a bunch of, like, shrapnel.
The shrapnel, oftentimes, a lot of times, if I remember correctly, because I did research for a thing I was writing, if I remember correctly, sometimes if there's shrapnel, they kind of have no choice but to take it out, because the shrapnel can do more damage over time. But part of why they don't take bullets out usually is because, there's a lot of unknown factors, like the trajectory. How did this bullet enter? If you're trying to pull it out from a completely different angle than it went in, you run the risk of doing way more damage pulling it out. But they did manage to get the bullet out of him. However, it took 6 separate surgeries to do so.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. But anywho, back to Steinhagen for a moment. So Steinhagen, she was found incredibly not of sound mind to stand trial. And she wound up doing 3 years in a psychiatric ward to help her get through this. She wound up writing a memoir about it. According to theversed.com, in this memoir, she said that of this fantasized love affair, she said, "I used to go to all the ball games just to watch him. We used to wait for them to come out of the clubhouse after the game, and all the time I was watching him, I was building up in my mind the idea of killing him. She also says, as time went on, I just became nuttier and nuttier about the guy. I knew I would never get to know him in a normal way, so I kept thinking, I will never get him, and if I can't have him, nobody else can. Then I decided I would kill him. I didn't know how or when, but I knew I would kill him. Another thing that she said about the actual shooting, she said to her psychiatrist, one of the psychiatrists that she spoke to, she said that the reason she did it would be so she wouldn't have to be nervous all of her life. And she said to an attorney during the preliminary trial, when she was found to be not of sound mind, she said to the attorney, only in that way could I relieve the nervous tension I've been under the last 2 years. The shooting relieved that tension. So clearly there's something very wrong. Yeah. So what happened was, at the end of 3 years, she was released, and her doctor said that she made a remarkable recovery, that she was absolutely not the same person that she was when she went in, rather. So she was found fit to stand trial, but Wakis, who, by the way, Wakis returned the very next season.
Yeah.
After all of this, like, he made a pretty decent recovery. He even helped the Phillies get to the pennant in 1955, I want to say.
Yeah.
No, it was yeah, it might have been 1955. It was between 1950 and 1955 that happened. I don't remember the exact year.
I don't know sports.
Yeah. So, and I forgot to write that piece of information down. So, in 1952, she was declared legally sane enough to stand trial for attempted murder. But Wakis didn't want to press charges against her. So, they dropped the charges. So, after this, she went and lived a very quiet life and fell into obscurity. She wound up passing away in December of 2012 at the age of 83. Her neighbors, one of the things I read, they spoke to one of her neighbors who was absolutely stunned to find out that this was a thing that happened, that she did. Because she was just a very quiet woman and everything. One of the articles I read stated that she, after her treatment was over, after those 3 years, she wanted to go back into the hospital, but as a physical therapist. I don't know if that was a thing that wound up happening, if she ever did that. But yeah, she wound up living a pretty quiet and uneventful life after that. Wakis himself passed away due to illness in 1972. I believe he was 56. He was in his mid-50s at the time. But yeah, this is one of those things that, because of the outcome, it's a lot of people don't realize that it was based on a real event. I read somewhere else that there's a Red Sox pitcher who people thought was the inspiration for it, but it's not. None of the other details add up. And yeah, so that is the story of Eddie Wakis and Ruth Ann Steinhagen.
How do you somehow manage every single time to find the weirdest fucking stories
And the fact that it's kind of an important one because it's one of the first stalker cases.
Yeah.
I don't know, dude. I'm into things that wind up haphazardly being intertwined with other things that I'm like, oh, I could talk about this on the show.
I mean, especially because you find like all kinds of true crime stuff all the time, and I don't get into true crime stuff, but like, geez, man.
Honestly, and this is gonna sound so incredibly super cliche, but the truth is often very much stranger than fiction. And I've read some real life true crime stories that are far crazier or far weirder or far worse than a lot of stuff that I've read and seen as fiction. And this is one of those times where the truth inspired the fiction, and at least in that regard, it was pretty close.
Like I said, I mean, it's just, oh my god, part of me wishes that this had just remained fiction. Oh god.
Yeah, but like, imagine my shock when, oh yeah, The Natural. I know that movie. I've never read the book. I kind of want to. After doing my research for this episode, I kind of want to go through and read it, especially since a lot of, like I said earlier, a lot of the movie deviates from the book, in some strange ways.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I grew up watching that movie among other movies, sports related, and I never knew that it was based on it's one of those things that it's so absurd that you would never think it actually was a thing, and it was a thing.
Yeah, like I said, it's very, oh my god, it's very weird, strange, and unnerving to me.
Yeah, the part about the fact that she set a place at her dinner table.
Yeah.
What, as much as I don't want it to come across the way that it's going to, so I don't mean it the way that it's going to sound, but I can almost understand, the pictures and stuff like that. What teenager with a crush doesn't have a bunch of pictures of, the celebrity that they might have a crush on or something like that. So maybe not so much the shrine or sleeping with a picture underneath her pillow, but that I could at least sort of understand. But there is a whole other level there when you are setting a place at your table for somebody that you know is not coming.
Yeah.
And somebody that you have never met, and that because she knew that they weren't really in a relationship. She knew that this was a fantasy.
Yeah.
But it was such a strong thing that she legit said that it made her nervous. That it caused her such distress that she felt like she needed to do this very awful, drastic thing.
Yeah.
Yep. So imagine my shock finding out that this thing that I knew from the time I was a little baby, was based on an awful thing that happened in real life.
Man, the mind is a weird ass thing.
It really is. Like, we've discussed before that both of us have, during our lives and currently even, dealt with mental health issues and things like that. And honestly, just from what I've experienced, some of the shit that my brain has done to me has been pretty fucking scary at times. Yeah. But I can't imagine, I cannot imagine what would drive somebody to feel the need to do this. Yeah. And the fact that her family, because at that point she's 19, she's an adult. she lived on her own. It's not like she still lived at home, and her even knowing that, even with that, her family knew that this was a thing that happened and were thanking their lucky stars that he was traded, because they were like, oh, maybe she could. I don't remember if I misread it or whatever, but one of the things that I remember reading about the case was that she said, either she said or it was a thing that was said about her psychosis, that because of this, she felt like she couldn't have anything normal with anybody else.
Oh, yeah.
So, so this was really eating away at her life. This fantasy that she had built up, and then to feel betrayed because he was traded, which, by the way, more often than not, because there are some cases where, players, especially nowadays, I'm not sure if it was the case really back then, but especially nowadays, sometimes due to contract or whatever, players do have some tiny say of where they go, and that's not even an always thing, and it really depends on a lot of different things if that is a thing you can do. But yeah, so she felt betrayed that he was traded, and this wasn't his decision.
Yeah.
It's not like he said, you know what, it's been real, Chicago, but I want to go to Philadelphia now. It wasn't his choice, and she felt super betrayed because his team traded him. But it's...
Yeah.
It's bizarre. I mean, the fact that he didn't want to press charges. I wonder about that, because I don't remember reading anything about him saying why.
Why, yeah.
So that I found interesting. I don't know if it was... because it could be because it could be a lot of reasons, and this is total speculation, but, it could have been, and unfortunately he's not around anymore to ask, but, it could have been because he felt sorry for her, that she was so sick that she had to be hospitalized for 3 years before she could be remotely qualified to stand trial. It could be because he just genuinely didn't want to see her again and was worried about what seeing her again might do. It could be because he had, because again, 3 years later, he was already back playing, this crime happened in a completely different city than where he was currently living. So he just might not have wanted to go through the trial. He might have felt like, okay, well, if the doctors are saying that she's sane, I don't think I have anything to worry about anymore. One of the things I forgot to mention too, that she had a couple of different plans.
Yeah.
Of how it would go down. The gun was obviously one of them. She had it with her, but one of the ideas she had initially was that she was going to stab him when he walked in, but but he kind of walked into the room too quickly for her to do that, and I don't know if she panicked and froze or whatever, but she wound up shooting him. But yeah. So that's the real life story of The Natural.
Oh, man. Well, that was a roller coaster.
I feel like every time I tell you a true crime thing, you wind up saying, well, that was a roller coaster.
Because it is, every single time.
Yep.
And you somehow manage to find something new to make me go, what the fuck?
Yeah, and the beautiful thing is, I know if it's within the sports world, I know for a fact that you don't know it.
I have no idea, yeah.
Yeah, so I try to look for sports stuff because it's stuff that even if I'm not a fan of the sport or whatever, I might vaguely kind of have an idea and be like, oh yeah, that was a thing. But yeah, so that's that.
Well, I think that's all the time we've got for this one.
Mm-hmm.
But end of show announcement time. I would like to give a huge thank you to Gideon and Bat for hosting us on their website. You guys are wonderful and we love you so much. It is fierceferrets.com. You can find us over there. And if you want to find the Fierce Ferrets on Twitch, they stream most of the time. You can find them on twitch.tv/fierceferrets. And yeah, they're wonderful and great and they're funny and you should definitely go check them out. If you want to see us and other things, you can see us in The Last Light, which is streamed on Tuesdays live and is on the Fierce Ferrets website as well. I play Zrix, a wonderful bug boy sniper.
And I play Reese, an android mystic who does magic real good.
You can also find us dabbled around in Drunk Fandom. We're over in that every now and again whenever an episode pops up for us to do, which we need to get on that again.
Yes.
But yeah, you can go find us over there. We have other things, and there probably will be more shows coming soon. Who knows?
You can also find us on social media. We have a Twitter account and an Instagram account. The name on the account on each account is the same. It's at the COTV podcast. So we give updates there. We share funny pictures and memes, things of that sort. Also, if you have an idea for an episode, shoot us a line, and if we use your idea, we will give you a shout out and thank you for it, because there's only so much we can come up with on our own.
Yeah. Also, we have a Patreon and a coffee. So you can go find us there on one of our many social media outlets that we're a part of.
It's the pinned tweet on our Twitter page.
Yeah. That said, we need some housekeeping with our Patreon to get out of the way. We would like to give a huge thank you to Brandonson, to Gierda, and to Fierce Ferrets for supporting us. We love you very much and we appreciate it. We also have
also real quick, because of or rather with our Patreon, some tiers allow you entrance into our exclusive Discord. So yeah, so those really neat people that we just gave a shout out to are in our Discord as well. It's the $5 tier and up.
Yeah. Patreon also allows you to kind of vote in polls on things to help us decide what the next episode might be or that kind of thing.
Yeah. I'm working on some other perks.
Yeah.
For all patrons, even the $5 tiers, that will be Patreon exclusives.
Yeah. But yes, thank you so much to those who have joined our Patreon. We love you so much. You're wonderful, and thank you for helping us to keep this going.
Yeah, and also thank you to everybody that listens to us in general, because yeah, without you, we probably wouldn't keep doing this.
Yeah. But I think with that, I think that's everything.
Yeah.
But that said, we will see you guys in the next episode, and until then, sweet dreams.
Bye.